You are listening to the audio edition of Unstoppable Farce, the Mitch Maloney story, by Mitch Maloney, read by the author.
Chapter 18, Skipper Skete's Beef Baloney. Another day, another interrogation in another nondescript office. Only this time, judging by all the space junk floating outside the porthole, I'm in the belly of some kind of a low-orbit space blimp. I haven't ruled out the possibility that my interrogators are aliens in disguise, but they sure look human. In fact, they're the spitting image of a couple of chat show second bananas I recognize from my home planet. I can tell they mean business, partly on account of the scowls on their faces, and partly on account of their kinky black leather zip suits, covered in extraneous clips, buttons, cartridge belts, and shoulder holsters. We're not here to play games, and we don't have time to waste. So don't even think about trying to do our voices or vocal impressions of anybody that might come up during the questioning today, says Special Agent Guillermo Rodriguez. Fine by me, I say. You're the ones with the guns and I'm handcuffed to this chair, so I guess we'll play it your way. So what can I do for you, fellow humans? Are you aware that there's a warrant for your arrest from the International Criminal Court? Asks Special Agent Louis Cato. He slides an official-looking document across the steel table. It's got my picture on it. Well, if man's laughter is a crime, then I guess I'm guilty. It's pronounced manslaughter, Mr. Maloney. You think Mitch Maloney is worried about the popo? I'm a professional entertainer. I answer to the COPO, the Court of Public Opinion. And as long as my public, affectionately known as the Maloney Fanwiches, loves me, there's nothing I can't accomplish. I have absolutely no idea what these false charges are in regards to, and for the record, I wasn't the one steering that ferry last Halloween on the Hudson when it crashed into that iceberg. Relax, Mr. Maloney. We're not interested in turning you in. In fact, to do so would contravene the interests of the legacy media comedy complex that we represent. Nobody wants to talk about the wreck of the SS Mayhem. It's kind of a major bummer. The kind of bummer that makes people permanently disinterested in innocuous banter and mild japery, not to mention toothless political grandstanding and promotional stunts. Which is why the League of Acolytes for Televisual Emcees and Raconteurs has partnered with the Buttigieg administration and Dunce Pharmaceuticals to eradicate the scourge of 8H trutherism. Our mission is to obliterate global suffering, one chat show chuckle at a time. And part of that mission is severing the reputation of Mitch Maloney from the complicated events from that night on the Hudson. Which is why you've already been pre-approved for the famous Comedian Protection Program. But before we release you from our custody and proceed with your multi-platform cultural reintegration, we have a few questions. We need you to fill in a few blanks, some details that are absent from your on-the-record remarks. Let me be perfectly clear. Mitch Maloney is no snitch. You think I'd be where I am today if I played fast and loose with juicy behind-the-scenes hot goss? My lips are sealed, and no amount of flattery can change my mind. You have a gift, Mr. Maloney, a once-in-a-century kind of gift. We only want to help clear any obstacles limiting your potential success. On the other hand, dishing the dirt is pretty much the whole point of writing a memoir, isn't it? What would you like to know? Now, before we get started, in order to receive protection and promotion from the legacy media industrial complex, there are certain promotional obligations you will be expected to maintain. You mean like selling out? That's not a problem. So you'd consider doing promotional spots, even in the middle of this audiobook? Consider it. Hey there, busy bees. Do you ever wish you could eat a delicious home-cooked meal without spending hours in the kitchen? Well, now you can, without lifting a finger, except to press go on your microwave. Introducing Purple Spatula, the frozen meal delivery service that makes dinner time easy, convenient, and tasty, without all that cooking nonsense. Here's the deal. Every week, Purple Spatula sends you frozen, pre-portioned meals that are ready to heat, serve, and devour. No chopping, no prepping. Just pop your Purple Spatula meals in the microwave, and in just a few minutes, you'll be enjoying everything from classic meatloaf to creamy chicken Alfredo. Because hey, it's the future. Purple Spatula is perfect for busy professionals, tired parents, or anyone who's just over the whole meal prep thing. Purple Spatula platters are packed with flavor, made with real ingredients, and delivered right to your door, frozen and ready to go. So get started today at purplespatula.com and use promo code HEATANDEAT to get 20% off your first week. Because who needs a spatula when you've got a microwave? Terms and conditions apply. See website for details. Excellent, says Agent Cato. There's one very important topic we need to cover, Mr. Maloney. The whereabouts of the 7XL. The 7XL. That's right, the device you removed from a laboratory underneath Rockefeller Center. Did you still have it with you when you boarded the Mayhem? Oh, you mean the contraption with the purple gas and the brain inside? Sure, I had it shoved up in the fake fin. Can you believe I got past security? They should have known better than to put Spade and Carvey in charge of the velvet rope. Anyone who ever heard their podcast would know what low standards they have. They were so busy adjusting each other's Sweeney sister ball gown shoulder straps, they didn't even notice a 7-foot-tall foam rubber land shark slinking up the gangplank right behind their backs. You can go ahead and pick up your testimony from where you left off at the end of Chapter 13, the point where you were entering the captain's quarters, and just tell us what happened to the 7XL. Don't waste any time with a bunch of shoehorned-in catchphrases or nostalgic tangents. We don't need to hear any arcane references, callbacks, or Easter eggs. So please omit any extraneous details that might only be of interest to the most fanatical followers of the show's history and lore. No problem, fellas. So I say the password, Candygram, and Leslie Jones, who's dressed like the church lady, lets me inside the captain's quarters, which has been dressed up with cardboard instrument paneling from the last voyage of the Starship Enterprise skit. And there's a brass plaque on the wall that says, "The captain's word is law," which I remember seeing on the 17th floor of Rockefeller Center. The big wooden captain's chair slowly swivels around, and there he is, wearing a fancy silk waistcoat and powdered wig, the lousiest cast member in the history of the show, if you're not counting Chevy, or Piscopo, or Brewer, or Hutzel, or Sands, or Schneider. Actually, that one could go either way. Skipper Skete himself. Somehow he looks even stupider in person. Since the first time I laid eyes on him, I despised him for reasons I can't quite explain. Maybe it's the uncanny resemblance to Biff, the bully from Back to the Future. Or maybe it's the cavernous, vacant eye sockets, sucking all the funny into their vortex like swirling black holes. Standing over his shoulder, wearing matching peaches and cream brocade Georgian dress, is the second in command, Mr. Punchable Face himself, bashfully wafting himself with an ornate folding fan. The lord and lady themselves. Not that I needed the wardrobe to tell me I am looking at a couple of bags. The captain asks me if I'd care for a libation, which makes my ears perk up because I'm 90% sure that means booze. But then I remember how Mike Myers described the cast as the court of the Borgias.
Endnote 1.
Even the nicest Borgia has a poison ring. So I say, no thanks. And then he asks me if I want to see his Rodney. Of course, in showbiz, you get asked that question a lot. And 9 times out of 10, for me, the answer is no thanks. But in this particular instance, well, I can read between the lines in Voyeuriety magazine just like everybody else, and I gotta admit, I'm kind of curious. So the first mate and Leslie Jones proceed to unclasp a series of straps and buckles, then delicately roll it out onto the long captain's table. And believe me when I say, it ain't no party pepperoni, that's for sure. It's not even some blue ribbon salami. That there is a full-blown beef bologna. You know how Lenny Bruce used to say that a big one looks like a baby's arm holding an apple? Well, this is more like an albino python swallowed a chubby 8th grader who got his foot stuck in a bicycle helmet. It looks and smells just like a porpoise that washed up on a beach 2 weeks ago. I say, that's gotta be the biggest in the business, at least since Uncle Milty's. The skipper winces at my words, and then I notice the crude surgical scars below his navel, the rusty staples and moldering kitchen twine, attaching the mammoth member to his lower torso, and perhaps most telling, a tattooed inscription along the shaft that says, "Property of Mr. Milton Berle, Esquire. Born Mendel Berlinger, a.k.a. Uncle Milty, a.k.a. Mr. Television, star of the Texaco Star Theater, and 2-time honoree on the Hollywood Walk of Fame for work in both radio and television." The skipper's staring down at the enormous flaccid kalakala laid out across the table. Uncle Milton called it his endowment, he says, but in the time that I have been its warden, I have found it to be more of an encumbrance, if not a curse. Tears are welling up in the corners of his enormous stupid eyes. Yeah, I could see that, I say, as I eye the blue-veined custard pumper. Looks like more trouble than it's worth. Like this decommissioned Staten Island ferry, actually, now that I think of it. Or the show itself. Who wants to steer that bloated boatload of nostalgia around the Hudson? Apparently, Skipper Skete is feeling chatty. Lucky me. Hume said, "The life of man is of no greater importance to the universe than that of an oyster." How the hell am I supposed to know whom said that? It's your quote, not mine. The first mate lowers his fan, and to no one in particular says, Endnote 1. Then the skipper arches his big, dumb, stupid Cro-Magnon eyebrow and says, "Being is unrecognizable, unless it manages to seem, and seeming is feeble, unless it manages to be." That is, according to Gorgias. Endnote 2, says the first mate. So what if someone's good-looking? That doesn't automatically make 'em smart. Thoughts don't care about truth and shit. They sit up in your mind and with you whenever. Richard Pryor said that one.
Endnote 2.
You're not the only one working on their memoir. He asks if I've ever considered that I may be merely a figment in the imagination of some unknown author. Who the hell would think of something this elaborately stupid? A lunatic, perhaps? An outsider? Someone imagining a dream left unpursued? Someone mired in regret? Spinoza observed that a man hates what he laughs at. Endnote 3, says the first mate. It sounds to me like you're talking about fan fiction, the only form of expression even lower than podcasting. You're really not doing this unseen author guy any favors. Why don't you just give him an unlistenable harmonica solo to bookend the chapters of his audiobook while you're at it? Or perhaps, says the skipper, perhaps it's all one big joke. You better hope not, I tell him, 'cause from what I've seen, comedy isn't exactly your strong suit. Look, I'm not here to participate in theoretical thought experiments. I'm here because of this brain in a vat. I pulled the contraption out of my Halloween costume. This here is the brain of none other than the executive director himself. I'm happy to hand it over, but on one condition. I came here for a wig. I'm not leaving this room until somebody hands it over. You mean this, says the first mate, pulling my precious Dennis out of his pocket and sniffing it with a sick smile like some kind of prevert. I can't stand to see it defiled like this. You give that hairpiece to me right now, or I'll smash Unky Lorne's lobes all over the floor. He tosses me the wig, but I'm not thrilled about the condition it's in. I don't know. Looks pretty mussed, I say, like it hasn't been combed or conditioned in a while. But how can I resist my precious, cherished Dennis? Okay, well then I guess I'll be going. Not so fast, Mr. Baloney. One does not simply pass through the captain's quarters. There is a tribute required, a toll to be paid. What did you have in mind exactly? 'Cause my financial advisor keeps me on a pretty short leash. He nods toward the first mate, who pulls out an ominous-looking aluminum briefcase from a cabinet. He pulls something out and starts assembling it. Looks like a miniature guillotine, just about the right size for a Barbie doll. A Barbie doll, or maybe a party pepperoni. What's going on here? You think you're gonna add Mitch Maloney's slapstick to your collection? There ain't no way you're getting me to put my pogo stick in that contraption. Rest easy, Mr. Baloney. As you can see, I've already got more in that department than I can handle. Your manhood is safe. Your fingertips, however, well, fingertips just happen to be the girls' favorite food. And who are the girls exactly? He pushes a button and a panel in the wall slides open to partially reveal a hidden chamber holding half a dozen snarling, drooling wolverines. Let's see, says the captain. There's Kazi and Kaya, Emrata and Kim, and of course little Ariana. You wouldn't dare dismember me. Why not? Because it's illegal. Nothing's illegal when you're in international waters. Actually, I don't think the Hudson is international waters. Maybe not, but we won't be in the Hudson for much longer. So it sounds like the plan to move all 160 or so veterans of the show to St. Bart's to start a new Atlantis of purebred chosen ones is already underway. A big video screen lights up, in addition to the fire in the engine room, and all of the smaller fires and multiple injuries in various parts of the boat. We have another problem. We're detecting a large object in the harbor that is about to hit the stern. And Skipper Skete just throws his hands up in the air and says, "Oh well, Sailor V," and then...
Mitch, I'd like to get a quick safety on the last line, if we could.
What for?
Sounded like you said Sailor V. And according to Dumptopedia, I believe the saying is C'est la vie, which comes from the French.
How dare you impugn my credentials as a proudly semi-bilingual, partially Canadian citizen? To you I say au contraire, mon amini. Skipper Skete couldn't order an hamburger if he was starving to death in the middle of the Rudy Petite shampoo in Quebec City.
Should I look that one up as well?
He wasn't saying c'est la vie. He was calling on his intelligence officer.
The intelligence officer for the ferry?
Vanessa Bayer, whom he affectionately refers to as Sailor V.
Right. So, okay, then I'll just, all right, copy that, I guess.
Well, mercy bocap very much to you, too. The skipper says, as Derrida observed, there are things like reflecting pools and images, an infinite reference from one to the other, but no longer a source, a spring. The reflection, the image, the double, splits what it doubles. Endnote 4, says the first mate. That iceberg is as real and as meaningless as existence itself. He tells Sailor V to stay the course. Look, I tell him, I understand why you'd want to off yourself, but you don't have to take everybody on this boat down with you. How about we turn this ferry around and everybody can go back to living their lives? You're still a young fella that some people seem to like for reasons beyond my understanding. Why not just get a nice gig on some network sitcom or something? Because I'm not ready for prime time, he screams. Can't you see that? Nobody on this boat is. Those that were jumped ship a long time ago. But you don't go on because you're ready. Isn't that it? Remember how your beloved Unky Lorne once said that in every single interview and casual conversation he ever had? Regardless of how rough or inconsistent the show is, even if every skit is a stinker, it gets delivered on time. According to a production schedule he accidentally invented at day camp when he was 14 years old.
Endnote 3.
Now the skipper and first mate are both completely turned around, looking past me at the girls, and while I've been talking over their shoulders, I see a pair of oversized red toilet plungers suctioning their way across the curved glass of the ship's windshield, followed by 2 more plunger pairs. And then a circle of green smoke forms in the glass as a laser carves a hula hoop-sized hole, and the next thing you know, in climb 3 70-somethings in less than skin-tight skin suits. The small one pulls out his scuba mouthpiece and says, "We're here for the 7XL. Just hand it over, and nobody here needs to get smashed." He pulls out a Louisville Slugger with an inscription of its own. Of course these flunkies work for Ebersol, the man who hired Lorne in the first place, the keeper of the duck pin.
Endnote 4.
He's been biding his time all these years, planning this mutiny, plotting to take back what he believes has always been his show. The taller, puffier invader takes off his goggles. Looks like Piscopo, although it's hard to be sure on account of all the facelifts and hair plugs. He says, "Whoa, what's with that rotting dolphin corpse on that table?" "That just happens to be the biggest ding-a-ling in show business," I tell him. "No kidding," says the third stooge, who I'm almost certain is Mary Gross and not Robin Duke. The captain offers them a drink, but only Piscopo takes him up on it. He says, "Alcohol may be man's worst enemy, but the Bible says love your enemy, as Mr. Frank Sinatra himself once put it." Endnote 1, says Mary Gross. "It's hard for me to see what the 3 of you might want with the 7XL, says the skipper. "None of you even ever worked with the brain in that device. Allow me to propose an alternative arrangement." He's talking directly to Piscopo, who seems to be running the operation. "What if I were to offer you this phallus instead? Scores of people on this boat can say they are members in this exclusive company, but only one can be the warden of the ultimate member." But Kazarinsky interjects, "It isn't up to us to change the plan. We're under strict orders." But I can see the desire in Piscopo's eyes, and so can Skipper Skete. "Take it," says the skipper. "May it serve you well. Only let us keep the 7XL. It belongs with us." "So you'd rather part with your joystick than the 7XL? That tells me everything I need to know." As old Blue Eyes said, if you possess something, but you can't give it away, then you don't possess it. It possesses you. Endnote 2, says Mary Gross. It amounts to the same thing, which is nothing, says the skipper. We're approaching the end of history, a point where novelty accelerates so fast that linear time collapses, leaving us swirling in a self-referential vortex of chaos and absurdity, as McKenna illuminated. Endnote 5, says the first mate. And what lays beyond that? What is the future of the future? An interdimensional awakening? Or a drop off the falls at the limits of the imagination?
It's called premise overload.
A familiar electronic voice comes from the box. The captain says, Unky Lorne, you mean you could talk to us the whole time?
Oh, sure, but you understand. It's like that sort of thing where the less you talk, the more people respect you. It's sort of my whole deal.
Kazarinsky, apparently in shock from the voice emanating from the gadget in his hands, throws it against the wall, smashing through the panel, holding back the skipper's snarling pack of pets. The creatures scatter across the polished wood deck. The crew climbs up onto the instrument panels, just out of reach of the carnivores slobbering at their feet, as the septuagenarian invaders climb back up the wide dashboard toward their escape hole. Left with no other option to satisfy their hunger, the stinky, sadistic beasts coalesce on the captain's table and begin devouring the skipper's second-hand plonker. Meanwhile, the mayhem is listing and no one is minding the wheel. Looks like the Viking funeral O'Donoghue called for 45 years ago is finally happening.
Endnote 5.
We better vamoose, says Piscopo. For what is a man? What has he got, if not himself? Then he has not. That's from the chairman of the board. Endnote 3, says Gross as they start to climb out the window. Not only is the captain not screaming in agony, he actually seems like he might be enjoying the savage emasculation. So in addition to being a stupid, talentless man-child, he's a prevert too. As Deleuze said, what a relief to have nothing to say. Endnote 6, shouts the first mate from the top of a navigational cabinet. With everybody so distracted, I decide it's a good time to make my exit. So I slip out a side door and leap into the mysterious blackness of the harbor, where my affable Swedish chauffeur Leif is waiting with an inflatable escape raft. The special agents seem pleased with my testimony. I hear a slow clap from behind and turn to see an older fellow. Another familiar face, decked out with all the zippers and straps. It's Higgins. But which Higgins? I'm the one with the eye patch and the 5 o'clock shadow who chomps on cigar stubs. Colonel Cleve Higgins, at your service. We appreciate your cooperation, Mr. Maloney. Of course, this has just been a pre-interview. We'll recommend you for a round of enhanced interrogations starting Monday. It's time for you to meet the Strike Force 6.
This audio edition of Unstoppable Farce, the Mitch Maloney story, was made possible by the Seventh Reformed Church of Latter-day Witnesses, the Bleepers.
Are you tired of wearing the same old boring jackets to your weekend games or business meetings? Want to elevate your style and performance without breaking the bank? Introducing Harry's Blazers, the subscription service that brings you a new high-quality sports blazer delivered right to your door every month. No hassle, no worries, just perfect fits and bold style. And the best part? You don't even need to leave your house. For just $29.99 a month, You'll get a new blazer delivered straight to your door. No more standing in long lines. No more decision fatigue. Just a fresh look every month, automatically. So stop blending in. Start standing out. It's time to upgrade your wardrobe and your game. Just like Harry's Blazers. Visit harrysblazers.com today and use code SPORTY to get 20% off your first month. Harry's Blazers, where your next victory starts with your jacket. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.